Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great weekend out there so far. Here to bring you the latest information that we have on the tropics. This will be jam-packed full of information because there is the potential for a big-time storm in the Gulf of Mexico later this week. Now, is this just going to be a tropical storm? Is it going to be a major hurricane? We have to figure that one out. But I'm telling you, I do think we're going to have a hurricane, in my personal opinion, in the Gulf of Mexico later this week. So we're going to give you all the information. We're going to talk on what's going on right now, the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over all model guidance, the GFS, Euro, etc., everything, all the Ensemble model guidance, and then we'll geek out with you guys a little bit. Talk about the environment that does support a hurricane, or at least a strengthening tropical system. Okay, we'll kind of nerd out with you guys there. And then we'll talk about steering currents, which we'll kind of nerd out with you guys in that portion of the video too. So that'll be just an entire kind of learning a segment where we'll just kind of geek out with you guys. And, you know, that'll be an opportunity for you guys, the audience, to just kind of understand what drives a strengthening tropical system and what steers them. As I do think the area of where this future potential system could go is starting to narrow somewhat. So we'll speak on where in this video. We'll also talk a little bit about impacts. We're not going to stay on that very long as this system has not even formed yet. So we don't want to get too lost in all the detail in that. So we'll also talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Sunday. We'll get you covered there. Timestamps are up throughout the entire video. Take advantage of them. I take the time to put them in the video after I drop the video, so definitely just jump ahead to certain portions of the video that you want to pay attention to. Don't blame you one bit. Don't get offended by that one bit. I know these videos are very long, so if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. I want to just say welcome to the new subscribers, new viewers. This channel is certainly a little different than other channels that do what I do with the weather on YouTube. It's more of a personal feel, laid back feel, so welcome. Hopefully you'll stick around, and if you do, I think you'll be happy that you did. So if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get going here. Let's make sure this is going to work for us, and it is, so we're good to go. So I want to start off by saying that this future potential system is going to be generated off something called a CAG, a Central American Gyrum CAG. It's basically this huge, broad area of spin that quite literally can spin right over all of Central America. Okay, we got these areas of energy that can be here, can be here, can be here. I mean, on the Pacific side, the Atlantic side, and occasionally, kind of where I put all these, random X's. Sometimes this energy can consolidate, really come together, and then develop a low-level circulation, and then all of a sudden, you have a tropical cyclone that has an opportunity to strengthen. This happens multiple times every hurricane season. It's not rare. It's not uncommon. It just happens, especially earlier in hurricane season and later in hurricane season. So huge broad area spin over Central America that occasionally can consolidate an actual dominant low-level circulation, and we'll get a tropical system out of it. Now, what's happening right now? Well, you just got convection scattered everywhere. You got stuff over here on the Pacific side. You got something trying to spin up in the Eastern Pacific. You got this area of moisture right here. We got this area here, which looks, scary and everything, but I just don't think it's going to form. If you tuned in last night's video, we had a big area right here. And remember, I mentioned the possibility of it just kind of dissipating, and it did. But in general, we're right on track for what we're thinking could potentially happen. Okay, what we're noticing here is if you see the streaking right in here of this convection, and when I say convection, I mean shower and storm activity, which is kind of indicated in the colors here. See the blow-ups in whites, even pink right here. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means that these updrafts are soaring way up in the atmosphere, which means that they're strong, they're tall, and this means we have deep convection, sustained convection here. So we're noticing there's some sort of tut going on down here, kind of this persistent upper level low, or upper trough, I should say here, that's going across this region. This is basically allowing for air to be dispersed outward just like that into this region, and then it kind of flows down here. This is allowing for air to be pushed out away from this region. This is allowing for a lot of rising air in the Western Caribbean right now, so we can just continue to have these blow-ups and convection that I circled right in here. So basically what I'm saying is the upper wind pattern is certainly there for something to get going somewhere in the Caribbean over the next day or two. And this entire region. I mean, it could get going up here, but I think the beginnings of this is going to go in this first circle I drew. So we're going to watch this area. Nothing together right now. No named storm. By the way, the next named storm is Helene, where this is just the area we were watching, okay? By the time we get into over the next couple days, something might look more dominant out here as far as a dominant piece of energy. But right now, just blow-ups of random convection, which is quite literally what the CAG does, the Central American Gyrum. So the latest from the National Hurricane Center, let's see if we have a new update. We do not. I will say there is a chance for a tropical wave to develop out here in the MDR, main development region. A lot of model guidance continues to go back and forth with this, but the MDR has definitely struggled with developing anything this hurricane season. Our main focus is going to be this. We are now at a high risk of development. When I say a risk of development, per the National Hurricane Center, that means you have a whatever percent chance, in this case a 70% chance of tropical development, which means a chance to develop into a tropical depression, or a named storm, which means it has a defined low-level circulation, which means it is a tropical cyclone. So there is a 70% chance in this red area that something is going to develop sometime in the next 7 days. So when it goes from that orange to the red, that means we pretty much have a high risk. I think this will bump up from a 70 to an 80% chance sometime over the next few updates, probably even today in my opinion. It could update here in the next 30 to 45 minutes in the 8 a.m. update. But this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Okay, 70% chance now. And that it's in that area that we don't like to see, where we can, we've gotten some of our infamous major hurricanes in. Okay. So let's go over all the model guidance. We're going to start off in more of a broad look. So we're going to start off in the Caribbean, right? And then we're going to zoom in on the fly and get closer to the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to initialize all this for about Tuesday early afternoon. So 18Z Tuesday, Zulu time. The GFS initializes a tropical storm in the Western Caribbean, a 999 millibar low. And I want to tell you guys, the quicker this develops, for example, if this develops in the Western Caribbean, the stronger, basically some of these more aggressive scenarios have the opportunity to play out. So GFS already has a 999 millibar low. As we are getting into Wednesday morning, it's nearing hurricane status between the Yucatan and the western end of Cuba. Okay, so let's go on and flip it to the southeast frame here. I'm going to do some of this on the fly, so y'all bear with me here. Here it is at the bottom of your screen. We go into Thursday morning. Okay, we have a 967 millibar high-end Category 2, low-end Category 3 hurricane right out here in the Gulf of Mexico. Here it is, the central portion of the low pressure, still well off the coast, well out here in the Gulf of Mexico. 967, like I said, but that would probably make it a Category 2, low-end Category 3. Before we go any further, I want you to notice how huge this hurricane is. It is huge, guys. It's not a little tiny itty-bitty hurricane. The GFS says, and almost all model guidance say, whether it's just a tropical storm or a hurricane, show a pretty large storm. It's alarming how large it is on model guidance. I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but it is. It's quite alarming. This continues, right? We start to get into about midday Thursday, the 26th. So this isn't too far away from us anymore, okay? That we're not talking 10 days out anymore. This has snuck up on us pretty fast. Okay, we got a 961. I would argue that's a Category 3 hurricane, at least close to it, okay? And it's sneaking up on the panhandle of Florida, and then it makes landfall as just that, like a low-end Category 3 hurricane right into the western areas of the panhandle of Florida. But look at all this moisture impacting Florida too. Okay, this is a big slug of moisture. I mean, this thing is going to have massive divergence aloft, especially on the eastern side, northeastern side of the system. You're thinking, Mitch, what the heck are you talking about with divergence aloft? Basically, air is being expanded outward from this system in this area right here, allowing for tons of rising air out ahead of the system. Rising air allows for the firing of convection, shower and storm activity, just a very moist environment. So it makes landfall here Thursday evening, September the 26th, here in the next several days into the panhandle of Florida, moves inland, brings a lot of impacts into Alabama, Georgia, to South Carolina. What I want you guys to know here, I'm going to back this up one run. For 2 runs in a row, the GFS had a Category 3 or 4 hurricane going right into the Big Bend and the western coast of Florida. So this was the run last night, okay? Not the latest run, but the run before that, the OOZ run. Had a 948 millibar low, making landfall into the southern Big Bend areas of Florida. It's a 948. And if you look at the run prior to that, let's go to, we showed this last night, but I just want to show you it again. We go to run prior to that, had a little bit further north, okay, as about a category 3 or 4 hurricane into the Big Bend of Florida. So the latest run has ticked west again. Okay, so that's something to watch. Something to watch. I would not call it a trend. I don't call one model run from one model run a trend. You got to get consecutive model runs one way or the other. Okay, but it did tick west. All right, what about the Euro? Remember, the Euro has consistently been a weaker solution here. Euro starts it off as a weak low pressure in the Western Caribbean. Still wants to drift this kind of over the Yucatan. We get into Wednesday morning. There it is, 1,001 millibar low. We get into Thursday morning. We have a tropical storm, 994 millibar tropical storm. Okay, so a little bit stronger now. Further out than what the Euro has been showing. Look at this big slug of moisture though, out ahead of this system. Big plume of moisture being pushed well north and northeast of this system. I'm telling you, that is something to watch. I think this is going to impact a lot more people the further this comes west and makes landfall. Euro continues, big plume of moisture, just a very steady pace of strengthening, no rapid intensification. Here it is, this coming Thursday evening, big plume of moisture getting slung northward from this, basically this upper wind pattern that supports so much dispersion of air to the north and northeast and east side of the system. And then this does eventually make landfall as a Category 1 hurricane, high-end Category 1 hurricane, high-end tropical storm, throwing a lot of impacts across Florida. This would push a lot of water up against the Big Bend coastal regions that's just been heavily impacted as of late, by the way, by multiple tropical systems over the last couple hurricane seasons. But this would bring in a lot of moisture, but certainly not a higher-end scenario. Just about a Category 1 hurricane at worst, based off the millibar here on the Euro. So we would pull for one of, I think that is the best case scenario. I think something's going to hit the Gulf Coast line. We just hope that it's a strong tropical storm, maybe just a Category 1 hurricane. I don't think it's going to be any weaker than that, in my personal opinion. But of course, this moves inland, brings a lot of impacts across the southeast into Friday. We'll figure that all out as we go. Now, we got the latest Euro AI model. Same thing, initializes this in the Western Caribbean as a weak tropical system. By the time we're into Wednesday morning, this is a tropical storm splitting the gap between Cuba and the Yucatan. And then we're getting into Thursday morning, this is a hurricane in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Once again, we'll flip it to the southeast frame here. Here it is. Euro AI model already slinging a ton of moisture northward across the eastern U.S. We continue to see that on model guidance. How much moisture gets pushed northward ahead of this load. Okay. So this continues, just a very sustaining, I would say, of strengthening, a very slow pace of strengthening with this. But this would make landfall as about a Category 1, high-end Category 1 hurricane, low-end Category 2 hurricane, well north of Tampa, right into, I would say, the west coast, the southern Big Bend region of Florida as a hurricane. This is definitely a hurricane, slinging a lot of moisture across Georgia, the southeast, and then this takes an abrupt turn due north. It brings a lot of heavy impacts across Georgia, South Carolina, Thursday night into Friday morning, and then this would be a big storm up the east coast. So the Euro AI model, hurricane into Florida, right here. What about the Icon model? And I'm not going to show the Canadian model. Canadian just is starting to look kind of weird, so I'm just going to stay away from that. The Icon model is kind of getting to that way with me too, but we're going to show it one more time here. Icon model, weak tropical system, finally develops here in the southern Gulf of Mexico as a 994 millibar tropical storm. Same thing, we'll flip to the southeast frame here. Okay, and here it is at the bottom of your screen. Remember, the 06Z Icon is only going to go 120 hours out. But the concerning thing about the latest Icon model run is we'll go all the way out till, this is all the way, it's much slower, much slower. So we're all the way out to about Thursday night into Friday morning. It's already got a Category 1 hurricane in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and it's heading north. And it has plenty of water to have an opportunity to strengthen. But will it? Because dry air is pretty close. I think honestly, the further west this ticks, yeah, the more impact it's going to bring to more people. But there's the potential for a weaker storm system, because I think the further west it gets, the more it kind of interacts with dry air to the west. So Icon, that's what it has. The OOZ Icon did something very odd. I'm not sure if I buy it. But here is the European Ensemble. Now check this out. This is from overnight. It's the latest OOZEPS. It makes up 51 members and then throws them all on an output for us on Weather Nerds, which, by the way, is a free site. Kind of weird to use sometimes, but it's free and it's awesome. I show it often. So you're going to see a bunch of L's come up at the bottom of your screen with a bunch of numbers associated with them. That is the millibar of how strong that particular low is. So we're going to go on and take this all the way out to about Thursday evening, and we're just going to go all the way out to about Friday morning. So what do you notice here? Well, the members are trying to come together somewhat on a landfall into Florida. I mean, whether it's, the west coast of Florida, the Big Bend of Florida, the Panhandle of Florida, the European Ensemble is really coming together to Florida. Now, that's not Mitch saying that's my final answer, okay? Like a game show. I'm just saying that the latest European Ensemble, remember I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the narrow, how it's kind of coming together, is starting to come together to Florida right now. So that's the Euro Ensemble. Some of these members are just tropical storms. Some of these members are hurricanes. So what about the GEFS Ensemble? Now, this is running right now, and we're actually just going to go 120 hours out and then get this going. A little bit more spread, right? I mean, we got some members still going into like Mobile, Mississippi, a couple members trying to get all the way into southeast Louisiana. We got some members like, south of Fort Myers. But once again, the kind of average is kind of right into here, kind of Florida, right? And there's a lot stronger runs in the GEFS Ensemble compared to the EPS because, I mean, the GFS has just consistently, been showing us a stronger storm scenario with this setup. So we get this back off, continue to roll, and this is the portion of the video we'll kind of geek out with you guys a little bit. So, if you want to understand what drives strengthening and the steering of these tropical systems, this portion of the video is certainly for you. So we're going to start this off by looking at the upper wind pattern. So these are winds at about 40,000 feet up in the air, 200 millibars. So we're going to start this off by about Tuesday midday. The blue area is where we have winds and, like I said, 40,000 feet up in the air at, anywhere from 20, 30, 40 knots. Once you get into the green, the yellow, and the orange, this is much higher wind speeds, like almost interstate wind speeds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Now, you note that in the low levels of the atmosphere, folks, the low to mid levels, this is where these tropical systems spin cyclonically. So they're going to be spinning like this in the lower levels around this actual central low pressure. So if you look in the upper levels, I'm talking above the actual tropical cyclone, above it, okay? Air is being dispersed outward. So if you look, you see these kind of lines with the arrows embedded into the lines. Air is being pushed away from the storm system and actually going like this, almost anti-cyclonically, the opposite direction as the actual low-level spin, cyclonic spin of the system. And then it kind of gets dispersed down here. You got air being dispersed like this, right into here, right out like that. It gets a little weird right into here with a little air pushing against the system, but right here it's like that. But the thing is, and I mentioned this in last night's video, down here there's just lack of flow regardless. So even if you have a little bit of air pushing up against the system, the white is like sub 20 knots of winds. So it's very light flow. So there's not enough, I guess you would say, shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere of wind pushing against the system to really alter the strength of to mess with it. 75% of the entire area around the system is getting air pushed away from it. We call this divergence aloft. There's many words you can use. I like to call it a ventilation system where air is being pushed away from the system. This is allowing for more air to rise. That air is being dispersed outward, and this is a continuous cycle. And when you have the opportunity for continuous rising air, that allows for the sustaining of convection, shower and storm activity, and just the firing at will of convection. So convection, obviously, shower and storm activity. Shower and storm activity is moist, it's rain. And that allows for these tropical systems to really gain a very moist environment and then eventually has an opportunity to develop into a low-level circulation. It cocoons itself with moisture, then it has an opportunity to intensify, potentially even rapidly intensify if it improves its structure. So with all that being said, all that fancy terminology there, this system is ventilating well. It's going to have an opportunity to strengthen because the upper wind pattern supports it. One thing I've not talked about much in the videos is the sea surface temperatures. Okay, sea surface temperatures, I haven't talked about it because they're plenty warm enough. Mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit across the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. It's like rocket fuel for this system. So that's why I haven't really mentioning it much, because it's kind of an obvious thing that's out there. It's a check on the box easy for a strengthening tropical system. So this environment will kind of continue. I mean, you'll take this on the GFS. You have tons of air, and this is what I'm talking about right here. I'm going to actually get a little bit closer here to the southeast frame. Okay, this is winds at a little bit lower in the atmosphere, but still 250 millibars. This is what I'm talking about. Here comes our system, right? And this is for this coming Wednesday night into Thursday morning. System is spinning like this, right? Oh my gosh, that is terrible. System is spinning like this cyclonically, right? But check out you see the lines right here with the arrows embedded into it. Look at the air being dispersed outward like this. Tons of air being pushed away from the system. Now look over here. You see how the lines are getting pushed against the system, then kind of abruptly going like that. So to me, this would tell me the further west this goes, the more it's going to be affected by this westerly shear. You see you see the lines down here with the arrows embedded into it. That is air in the upper levels of the atmosphere getting pushed against the system on the west side of the system. This would create some shear on the western side of the system and allow an opportunity for dry air to get wrapped into the cyclonic flow of this tropical cyclone. Now, if that happens, I don't know. We don't know, because we don't know how strong it's going to get in the earlier term. If it gets really strong, it'll kind of create a protection of moisture around the system, and you're going to need a lot of shear to disrupt the system to get dry air into the actual cyclonic flow of the system. But you see the arrows I'm pointing outward of the system. This tells me that you're going to have an opportunity for tons of moisture to get slung into all those directions I just drew into this area right here. A lot of moisture going to get slung into the southeast. Just the dispersion of air allows for the rising of air, etc. So what I'm trying to say in all of this is the upper wind pattern supports the intensification of a tropical cyclone here, okay, which would most likely be Helene. Remember, that system off the coast of the Carolinas did not take the name Helene. This would most likely be Helene unless something sneaky happens in the tropical Atlantic and takes that name, and then this becomes Isaac. So the latest GFS is a great representation of that shear that I was talking about on the western side of the system. You notice, let's just go all the way out to Thursday morning. You notice, remember I told you about all the moisture getting slung on the north and northeast side of the system? Here's a great representation of it. The green, moist air. Okay, the brown is dry air. Look at all this moisture getting pushed north, northeast, and east of this actual low-level circulation. Okay, so I'm telling you, there's going to be a huge shield of moisture to get slung northward and northeastward ahead of this system. Now, westerly shear is hitting this system in general right here. That's why there's dry air really close, pretty close by. We watch to see if this gets wrapped into the circulation as shear kind of eats up the western side of this system. But I want you to notice right off the dot on this particular run, the GFS, look how this thing is cocooned in a lot of moist air. I mean, that is a lot of moist air. So you're going to need something substantial to really get into the cyclonic flow of the system to affect it. And it tries to right at the last second, but the damage is done and we have a landfalling hurricane. You see how the dry air is trying to get in there. But, I mean, there is plenty of moist air still at the bottom edge of this storm, which would probably be the most vulnerable part of the storm. And it just doesn't affect it. Look at this huge slingshot of moisture. Wild stuff. For example, even if the system makes landfall here, you're going to get some water and air that gets pushed up against the coastline here. And this would actually create some storm surge even off the coast of the southeast. It happens a lot even when you have a landfalling Gulf storm into the panhandle of Florida. So I hope that makes sense. Wild stuff. Like I said, the further that this gets west, I think, like for example, if it did something like that, I think the more that this dry air is going to affect the system, no doubt. Okay, so that's something we got to watch. We continue to move forward. We look at steering currents. The more time that goes by with the steering currents, the more cut and dry this looks. And in fact, here in the next couple of days, we might get to a portion where we're not even, discussing this anymore. But low pressure is going to show up in the blue, high pressure in the orange or the salmon color here, but there's not much high pressure in to show us a good example of this. But flow around low pressure is going to go like this, and I'm just kind of using this big blue blob of low pressure as an example. Here's our actual low pressure. That's our tropical system in the Western Caribbean. And then the flow around this trough is going to go like that. Okay, so one thing to note right off the dot, there's just a whole lot of white around this system. Okay, this tells me there's very light flow. There's no big time pulling mechanism north of this system. A stronger storm system always wants to gain latitude, guys. So this thing is not going to go this way. Man, what's up with the ugly arrows this morning, guys? It's not going to go like this. It's not going to go like that. It's going to want to gain latitude. It's going to want to turn and go north. So nothing's really pulling this one way or the other. So this is just going to kind of gradually drift north. You see the blob of blue here? It's coming north. Okay, and then it gets right here. There's a couple things going on that's working in tandem to pull this thing due north. We got this ridge that we're watching. We got to watch how this ridge, what is this ridge going to do here in the medium term? But the flow around this ridge is going like this. The flow around this low pressure, this little upper low, is going just like that. And considering the fact that this is already a hurricane right here, Wednesday evening, this thing is already wanting to go north. So we got three things working together. A stronger tropical system that wants to gain latitude, flow around this ridge going like this, flow around this upper low like this. So where is this going to go? Well, it's an easy track north. It's going to go right into the Gulf coastline. It's like gears working together. And this is a pretty easy slingshot track north. There's a couple things that could interfere with this. We got to watch this high pressure, this ridge of high pressure. You know, is it going to be weaker, stronger? If it's weaker, then this could potentially kind of go more like what the GFS runs were doing yesterday. There's a lot of things here. But in general, this is going to hit somebody along the Gulf coastline. So that's a breakdown of the tropics. You know, I will mention this is the blend of all models as far as rainfall. This is between now and a week from today, so 1 week out. It just shows the idea that a lot of rain has an opportunity to fall across the southeast. So, you know, several inches to over a foot's possible. I think regardless along the panhandle of Florida, flooding is going to be there. So we'll obviously talk more and more on this when we just get a little bit closer. Okay, so let's break down what's going to happen weather-wise across the country for today. So a lot of rain right smack in the middle of the country. Shower and storm activity, nothing severe, heavy in southern Wisconsin. Just definitely a rainy Sunday morning across Missouri, Illinois, areas of Iowa, southern Nebraska, Kansas, areas of Oklahoma. We got a cold rain falling with some snow in the Rockies. And a little bit of moisture still hanging out off the coast of southern New England. So definitely a washout this morning. I wish we could get some of that rain in the Carolinas. Man, we need it, especially in South Carolina. But watch as warnings and advisories. Winter weather advisories continue in the Rockies and Colorado. Dense fog is with you guys this morning in areas of the Mid-Atlantic. But outside of that, guys, there's not a whole lot going on. You know, watch as warnings, advisories-wise, alerts-wise. Pretty quiet morning for sure. The excessive rainfall outlook, there's a couple areas to watch for a risk of flooding. One's Texas and one's, you know, the areas of the Midwest, areas of Missouri, Illinois. We'll watch both of these areas for a risk of flooding. All in all, not a significant flooding risk, but if you live in the yellow area, that's where you have a 15% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. The risk of severe weather, if you live in this marginal area from Fort Stockton, Midland, Abilene, Wichita Falls, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Springfield, all the way up to like Carbondale, Illinois, you certainly have a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather. So just watch out for some gusty winds and some small hail with this. So we'll breeze through this pretty quick. The southeast, maybe some isolated downpours are possible in areas of the apps. More well put together storm activity in western Kentucky that you can see up here cruising through. So if you're tuning in from western to central Kentucky, some shower and storm activity is possible. Here's this pop-up activity in areas of Georgia and South Carolina. Some downpours are possible in Florida. But folks, not a very active weather day. I can tell you one thing, it's going to be a hot day across the deep south. The heat is really starting to annoy me. Man, I was outside so long yesterday. I went to the zoo. I did soccer for 3 hours. And actually was so much that we actually planned on going to the football game at 7:30 last night. I'm a big Gamecock fan, and I was just like, I am pooped. We are not going to the football game tonight. I told my girls, we'll go to one a little bit later in the season. But trust me, they had a lot of fun at the zoo. So a little side story. Good for one, a video. But anyways, the Northeast, we'll continue just to deal with some pesky showers maybe in southern New England. But I don't think it'll be near as active today. Here comes the system swinging in from the west. Some showers on and off across Ohio. Maybe a rumble of thunder. Maybe some storm activity. We start to get into Monday morning. And then this energy starts to move fully into the Northeast. So we're waking up to some storm activity maybe in eastern Ohio, western PA, a little bit of shower activity in West Virginia and the western half of New York State. So That's it over the next 24 hours. It's been pretty quiet up in the Northeast for sure. South Central U.S. will continue to have this flow, the southwest flow that supports strong to severe storms. So once again, in central to western, really west central Texas, some strong to severe storms are possible, maybe even a small risk of a tornado. Some showers and storms are possible across central Ohio, some storms in northern Arkansas, southern Missouri later on this evening, just in that entire corridor. And then we start to get into the overnight hours. Some of this energy could continue to sustain itself overnight. And we're waking up tomorrow morning to just some heavy rain, pockets of heavy rain across central Oklahoma. And my people tuning in from Oklahoma, sorry about you. You lost last night. I know you might be some Sooner fans tuning in. I know Tennessee is a tough team for sure. I was watching a little bit about that game. A little bit on that game. I can't talk this morning, but definitely a little shower activity you're waking up to tomorrow morning. So the north central U.S., I think a lot of this energy will begin to clear, but it will definitely be a rainy Sunday across lower Michigan and even the eastern half of the UP and Michigan. Some storms are definitely possible in the Midwest. I mean, really anywhere in Illinois, Indiana. Definitely just a rainy day across lower Michigan for sure. And then this energy, will move into southern Ontario overnight and create a rainy night for you folks. And then all of this will clear out by the time we get into tomorrow morning. So out west, it's quiet. We're going to deal with a chilly day across areas like Colorado, this lingering rain. A little bit of shower activity is possible in northern Washington state, but man, there ain't a whole lot to speak on out west. It's pretty quiet. I think as we move into the overnight hours, some moisture could make its way into Montana, but pretty quiet. So there is a tight gradient of temperatures here, separating, kind of an Indian summer type setup and then more fall-like weather. So it's going to be a hot one across the deep south, guys. I mean, temperatures in the 80s and 90s. I'm not going to be outside much. I just don't want to deal with it. I can't stand it being this hot in late September. It is just such a buzzkill. I'm a big fall weather fan. But I mean, it's going to be hot all the way up into Ohio, West Virginia. You start to get a cool down in the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region. But you get into the central and western U.S., another hot day in areas of Texas. But Texas will be a weird state where half the state will be hot, and then the panhandle of Texas. And then even Oklahoma. I mean, southeast Oklahoma could get deep into the 90s, but you might get trapped in the 50s in the panhandle of Oklahoma. And a little bit of a gradient in Kansas too, but definitely a cool fall-like day in Colorado. Must be nice. So everybody else, pretty nice temperatures. Folks, that's all I got. Let's see if we have another update on the National Hurricane Center. And we do, but it stayed at a 70% chance of development. But looks like they now have an X. So I think they're watching this area of energy now, which tells me they're watching this to get going here. So that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again this evening.